everyone, and welcome back to the Football Chuggu Podcast. My name is Thomas Durning, and today I am joined by my co-host, Pearse McLaughlin. Hello, Pearse.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing well. On today's podcast, we will be reacting to last weekend's SPFL results, previewing the start of this weekend's English Premier League season, discussing all the latest transfer news from around the globe, and at the end of the podcast, Pearse will be giving a rundown of all the latest Asian football news. So coming up next, we'll be reacting to last weekend's SPFL results. So on Saturday, the 5th of August, the start of the 2023/24 SPFL season commenced, and the first set of results finished. So I'll just give you a quick rundown. Celtic 4, Ross County 2, Livingston 0, Aberdeen 0, St Johnstone 0, Hearts 2, Dundee 1, Motherwell 1, Kilmarnock 1, Rangers 0, and on Sunday the 6th of August, the day after, Hibs played St Mirren, and the score finished Hibs 2, St Mirren 3. So Pearse, what is your reaction to last weekend's results, and which game stands out to you?
Well, like you say, the SPFL never disappoints, and like you say, some of the smaller clubs down the towards last season got some of the big sides, but it's just at the very start, and that's the best time to get a Celtic or Rangers or an Aberdeen or a Hearts, like the top four, because not everyone's up to full speed, and as you've seen, probably the craziest result is probably Kilmarnock beating Rangers 1-0 at Rugby Park, because I think it was a later kick-off, a 5:15 kick-off, and all the star signings, the Rangers, Michael Beale's trying to fit them into the system, and I think you could just tell that it was just players thrown in and hope for the best. But Derek McInnes, his home form last season for Kilmarnock was exceptional. Never get any points off the big two last year. And this season, he's got Rangers right at the very beginning, and his side was well organised. We touched on it last week's podcast that some of the signings have been quite clever from McInnes, like experienced SPFL players, and he just got players that fit the system, and every man, they just wanted it more than Rangers. And I don't recall a shot on target in the second half from Rangers, considering they even brought in the new signing, Danilo, and even Kamal Roof towards the end as well. So Rangers had a lot of firepower, but they just could not penetrate that the back line of Kilmarnock, and I don't really think the keeper had a save to make. So worrying signs for Rangers, because obviously around the corner they've got a tough European fixture against Servette, which hopefully Michael Beale and a lot of Rangers fans will want to bounce back straight away, because big games come thick and fast, especially this August, September. That's crucial matches for in terms of domestic and European. And I'd like to touch on as well, Livingston as well got a fantastic result against Aberdeen, who obviously finished third last season as well. And obviously I think the two plastic pitches may have helped in that aspect. But no, the two are probably the standout ones for me, and obviously the Celtic Ross County it's quite standard. You expect the Celtic to win, but Ross County did give a good fist themselves, and they played some really nice football at times, and I think they kind of shocked Celtic how good they were under Al-Khaimah, because they do play some nice stuff, even though they narrowly avoided relegation last season. But no, for the standout fixture for me was definitely Kilmarnock 1, Rangers 0.
Yep. So obviously it was really good to see Scottish football come back last weekend. I think me and you've missed it a lot over the summer. It's always hard to kind of, first games of the season, as you said, teams are not all 100%, so it's hard to kind of predict you can't really predict how a team, will fare throughout the season. But just obviously going on to the standout result is obviously the Kilmarnock Rangers game. As you said, a really disappointing start for Rangers. Lots of new players in that team. Their front three had all signed this summer, and I think you could tell that they're not all kind of in sync at the moment. They're all everything's they're not all on the same wavelength, and I think that just will happen the more games they play. And the more games they play in the rhythm, they'll kind of get used to it. And also I just think it's plastic pitches where I don't think lots of these new signings have really probably played in plastic pitches before, in kind of professional football. So that was probably a new kind of thing to them. But a really disappointing start from Rangers' point of view. They didn't look like that. I don't think they deserved anything from the game on Saturday, in my opinion. I think Kilmarnock fully deserved a win. And in Scotland, if Rangers or Celtic lose, it's a massive thing, because that's Rangers already tailing behind Celtic, and Rangers are going to have to kind of go on a run now. So a really disappointing start from Rangers' point of view. But although that was a standout match of the weekend, I have to point out the Hibs St Mirren game, which ended 3-2 to St Mirren. That was a really entertaining game on Sunday. Obviously, St Mirren were 2-0 up at half time. Hibs managed to climb back into the game 2 each, and in the last minute, St Mirren scored. So that was a really entertaining game. I think St Mirren will have a good season this season. They had a really good season last season. They've added some players. And yeah, I think St Mirren will have a good season this season. Really good result for them. And obviously Celtic as well. Just lastly, at Celtic, obviously they kicked off the season, Flag Day, and it wasn't a vintage performance from them. Not Celtic that we've seen the last couple of seasons. And Ross County, fair play to them, they gave Celtic a good game, a really good game. So all in all, overall, it was good to see Scottish football back, and it was a really exciting weekend. Just sticking with Scottish football, we also have Scottish teams playing in European football this week, and they include Rangers versus Servette, Rosenborg versus Hearts, and Hibs versus Luzern. So, Pearse, how do you think these teams will do in this week's European ties?
Hopefully all teams can get a positive result. Firstly, touch on the Rangers versus Servette. That came at a great time for Rangers, because they were wanting to lick their wounds as quickly as possible. Because that result has come out with angered all the players and the manager especially, as well as the fans. And the best thing to rectify a poor result was to get a game quickly around the corner. And they don't come much bigger than a third round Champions League qualifier. And they're against a decent sized opposition, Servette from the Swiss league. So there'll be no mugs. And I do think Rangers, especially at home, they'll just have too much, and I think they'll probably win a bit, but 2-0, 2-3-0 maybe, which will probably potentially see them basically progress to the next stage. Well, then potentially could meet PSV Eindhoven, who they did play last year in the playoffs, so that'll be an interesting tie if they manage to make it through. Touching on Rosenborg Hearts, former Norwegian champions Rosenborg, who've played Celtic a few years ago in the Europa League. Very good opposition. Sort of be a very tough task for Hearts. And Hearts is a side that you touched on last week in the podcast, that they struggled to get many signings in, although they did get a great result the weekend against St Johnstone. So you hopefully that they can just avoid defeat, and hopefully they have a chance come Tynecastle in the second leg that they can progress, because you want all Scottish teams to boost that coefficient. And lastly, Hibs versus Luzern. We touched on it last week in the podcast, the week before. Hibs had a horrible result away from home against Dan Doreen side that finished second in the league, where they lost 2-1 away from home. But by God, did they rectify it in the second leg? They won 6-1. So, and obviously you touched on the weekend's results. They played St Mirren, and I thought St Mirren absolutely played them off the park. They managed to get back into 2-2, and then right at the end, because Hibs just threw caution to the wind, they get sucker punched right at the last, and I do think they've got a great attacking threat going forward. LU and Christian Doidge. You've got the new Dutch striker as well as Martin, the return of Martin Boyle, which is a key figure for them. So I do think I'd predict a Rangers win versus Servette, a draw for Hearts away to Rosenborg, and I predict Hibs versus Luzerne. I think Hibs will have enough to beat Luzerne, and like you say, I do think hopefully all Scottish sides can have a positive result come this midweek.
Yep. Just again, I'll just touch on it briefly. Three tough games for the Scottish sides. So Rangers Servette, as you said, that's a tough game. Servette from Switzerland, they look quite a good side. Rangers will be, they'll be determined to bounce back after that disappointing result on Saturday. I think Rangers have to win this game by a good few goals because I don't know much about Servette, but I think going there away from home will be really tough for them, Rangers, next week. So if I'm going to give a prediction for that Rangers Servette game, I'm going to say 3-1 Rangers. And if that result did happen, I wouldn't say Rangers are, home and dry into the next round. I think the away tie will kind of be the tie that really decides, who goes through it, Rangers and Servette. Rosenborg Hearts. Again, you were touching on the fact that Rosenborg are quite known to Scotland in terms of the fact that Celtic have played Rosenborg quite a few times in the Europa League and Champions League. So for Hearts going away for the first tie could do well. It's quite good for them because even if Rosenborg do win by at least a goal, I think bringing that tie back to Tynecastle could be really important for them. So predicting that game, Rosenborg versus Hearts, I'm going to say 2-1 to Rosenborg. Just the fact that Rosenborg are at home, but I would have every if that was the result, I would have every confidence in Hearts turning that result around at Tynecastle. So moving on to the Hibs Luzerne game, again another Swiss side that a Scottish team is playing. Obviously Servette and Luzerne are from Switzerland, so obviously Hibs are at home the first leg, so Hibs will want to obviously win at home and win by a good few goals. And Luzerne are a good side. I think they have quite a good European pedigree. So for that game, I'm going to say a draw. I'm going to say 1-1 for that game. But it's quite funny with that game as well. The Hibs Luzerne, whoever wins that tie will play Aston Villa in the Conference League playoff. And so that's that. If Hibs were to get through this tie and play Aston Villa, the return of John McGinn to Easter Road would be that'd be quite funny and interesting. So that Hibs Luzerne game, I had a lot riding on it because whoever wins out of them two will play Aston Villa. So yeah, three really tough games for the Scottish sides in this week's European ties, and obviously for the coefficient, the Scottish football will want to really do well. So let's see what happens. So we will now move on to previewing this weekend's Premier League matches. So on Friday, the 11th of August, the 2023/24 Premier League season will commence, and the first match of the season will be Burnley versus Man City, which is on Friday, the 11th of August. So on Saturday, the 12th of August, the main games that will be played are Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth versus West Ham, Everton versus Fulham, Brighton versus Luton, Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, and Newcastle versus Aston Villa. And then on Sunday, the 13th of August, which will be the next day, Brentford will be playing Tottenham and Chelsea will be playing Liverpool. And finally, on Monday, 14th of August, Man United and Wolves will be playing against each other to finish off the first week of the Premier League season. So, Pearse, what is your reaction to the upcoming new English Premier League season at the weekend?
Well, the English Premier League is always a week after the Scottish, so that's basically the return of all the top football because like you always like to watch your home league as well as obviously the English Premier League because it is just the one that everyone watches. It's so exciting. They've got so many big players, and so many cracking ties. And like you say, I think it was similar to the SPFL where like some of the big sides probably might not hit top form right away, so it's best like for the like you say the newly promoted Burnley to host Man City on Friday night. That's going to be an interesting tie. Vincent Company versus his former side. And also they were flying the championship last season, the spiritual test against the treble winners from last season. And obviously Arsenal as well. They looked pretty good in pre-season. They're just off the back of winning the Community Shield. And Nottingham Forest was a side that kind of struggled a bit towards the middle part, but then they gathered enough momentum and got the safety. So I think there's some cracking fixtures in there. And it's obviously exciting to see the Premier League back, and I just can't wait for it, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. Obviously, when the English Premier League season starts, that kind of excitement even builds up even more. Obviously, all the football stars of the world mostly playing the Premier League now, so really exciting. For that to start again. As you said, some really, really interesting games coming up in the first week. And yeah, really, really looking forward to it. So I'm just going to ask you, which game are you looking forward to the most?
Me, probably Newcastle, Aston Villa. I think because they're two kind of both in the same boat. Newcastle's impressed me pre-season, so has Aston Villa. Some of the signings have been pretty good as well. Like Aston Villa signed Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen, which I think that's a sign that's under the radars. They've also signed Pau Torres, and I think Unai Emery's assembling a fantastic squad, and he's showing that you don't have to pay massive fees to get quality players. And I do think they were pushing for Champions League places this season, or even maintaining that Europa League spot, top six at the bare minimum. And obviously proved last season that they had a fantastic end to the season. And it just shows you what a top class manager can do to a side that was struggling for at the early part of the season under Steven Gerrard. And obviously Eddie Howe, like you say, he's added Harvey Barnes, Harvey Barnes, which I think that's a fantastic signing from Leicester. And that he's basically the replacement for St Maximin, and obviously a different type of player for St Maximin, but I do think he offers more of a goal for it in terms of end product. It's not as tricky or skillful, but and obviously he just adds more firepower to that team. And I think obviously they've been solid at the back last season, and I do think that could go either way. That game, obviously St James's Park as well, but I think that could easily be a high scoring 3-3 or 4-4 because I think both sides are just that good, and they're two top class managers as well. So that's the one I'll be looking out for.
Yeah, there's actually two games. The biggest standout game for me is Chelsea Liverpool, which will be played on Sunday. Obviously Pochettino's first competitive game in charge. Liverpool, who have changed a lot this summer in terms of players leaving and players coming in, and obviously they're two top six sides, they're one of the biggest clubs in England. So that'll be a really interesting game. I'm really looking forward to that one. And the other game is Brentford Tottenham. My reason for that is because obviously it's Ange Postecoglou's first game in charge as Tottenham manager, and obviously as Scottish football fans, me and you have seen a lot of Postecoglou's team, Celtic team, last couple of years. But I'm interested to see how Tottenham get on with Postecoglou, because obviously with Antonio Conte last season and Ange Postecoglou, they two managers are totally different in terms of the way they want to play football. With Conte a more defensive manager and Postecoglou a more attacking manager. So I'm really interested to see how Tottenham set up and how I want to see the similarities in terms of how Tottenham play, in terms of how Celtic played under Ange. So Brentford versus Tottenham and Chelsea versus Liverpool are my two standout games that I'm really looking forward to this weekend. But obviously, every game, it's really exciting to see how teams get on. Obviously, the new teams that have just come up from the Championship, Sheffield United, that in Luton Town, who haven't been in the Premier League for years, who are quite a surprise package to come out in the Premier League. So, be interested to see how they get on. So we will now predict the first league games of the season. So, Pearse, we'll start off with you.
Burnley Man City on Friday. I'm going to go a shock. I'm going to go 2-1 Burnley. I think that Man City struggled against Arsenal in the Community Shield, and it's a bit perfect to play them opening game of the season. I think they can shock them. Friday night under the lights, anything can happen. On Saturday, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest. I'm going to go 2-1 Nottingham Forest. I'm going to go another shock. I genuinely think it's the best way to play the big teams, and I do think Arsenal will be on a massive high after winning their first trophy in I don't know how long, probably since Arsene Wenger or Unai Emery, I don't know. So they celebrate that as if it's a Champions League and it's a Community Shield, which are basically glorified pre-season friendly. So and then we've got Bournemouth West Ham. I think Bournemouth last season were fantastic under Gary Neal, and I thought he was harshly sacked in the summer. And I do think they'll regret that decision. And I do think West Ham minus Declan Rice should win that one, and I do think that can be a 2-1 West Ham. Everton Fulham were a fantastic side last season. Marco Silva played fantastic football under Fulham. Everton again struggled under Frank Lampard, and they had the fighting spirit of Sean Dyche, which just got them over the line in the end. And I do think that Fulham could cause more misery on Everton, and I do think it could be a 3-1 Fulham, even though it's at Goodison. That's what I'm predicting. Brighton Luton. Luton's newly promoted, but I do think Brighton will just have too much quality. Minus Alexis McAllister, but they've still got Enciso and Caicedo's still there for the time being, and they've got some quality players all over the park, Matoma especially. And I do think that could be a high scoring game. I think that could be a 4-0 Brighton. It could be a wake up call to Luton to see the step up in standard from the Championship to the Premier League. Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson had a great end to the season with Crystal Palace. And Sheffield United, this last week, they've just been losing their top players. They lost Ndiaye, and now they're potentially losing Sander Berge, which is virtually their two starting midfielders. So I don't see them picking up a positive result. I can see Crystal Palace winning 3-0. I just think that you should not be losing your best players on your return to the Premier League. You should be trying to build on that squad you already had. And I think that will be a struggle for them this season. And like you say, the Newcastle Aston Villa, I think it's going to be a high scoring game for both sides, and I'm going to go with a 4-4. I think both sides are just going to be rampant, and it's just going to be goals galore, like a basketball match end to end, and some fantastic bits to play from both sides. And then on Sunday we've got Brentford versus Tottenham. Brentford was a side that caused Tottenham a lot of problems last season. They played some fantastic football under Thomas Frank, and like you touched on it, it's interesting to see how Ange Postecoglou will change that pragmatic style that Tottenham's been used to for the last 3-4 years into a more offensive, inverted fullbacks, high attacking wingers, and they always arrive at the back post late to offer that attacking threat. And it'll be interesting to see if Harry Kane's still there come Sunday, because obviously Bayern Munich's been sniffing around for a wee while. And obviously, like you said last week in the podcast, it would be interesting. He never usually leaves once the season starts. So that'll be an interesting one. But I do think I'm going to go with 2-2. I do think it'll take time to implement that style, and I do think Brentford have just been a well-oiled machine. They're just so well run and so well coached, and I do think it'll be a 2-2 draw in that one. And then on Monday we've got Manchester United and Wolves. Oh no, sorry. First off, we've got on Sunday Chelsea Liverpool. Chelsea just lost massive player in Christopher Nkunku. And obviously, like you said, they lacked firepower last season, and that was like the one kind of downfall to their season. Really, they never really had anyone to put the ball in the back, and then Kai Havertz inconsistent. Romelu Lukaku was terrible. Then he went on loan to Inter Milan, wasn't much better there. And obviously Christopher Nkunku brought in Nicholas Jackson. But I can only see one winner, and I think it will be Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. I do think it'll, like you say, it'll take time for Pochettino to embed 60-odd players into a squad. There's just too many players to fit into a system. A lot of young, talented players for big fees and long contracts. And I do think Klopp was bought smartly, but he's struggling to replace the midfield. And I think that could be an issue for him. But in terms of the firepower, he's still got Darwin Nunez, you've got Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo. I do think that's a very good attacking threat, and obviously Alexis McAllister mind that as well, feed them. But I do think that could be we'll go a 2-1 Liverpool at Stamford Bridge, and then on Monday we've got Wolves versus Manchester United, and I do think Manchester United will have too much, and I think that'll be 3-0 Manchester United with Marcus Rashford, probably hat-trick maybe.
Yep. Thanks for that, Pearse. So for my predictions, so kicking off with Burnley Man City on Friday evening. Do you know what? I'm actually going to go with you. I actually agree. I'm going to say 2-1 to Burnley. Just that kind of Friday evening, first game of the season. The Burnley fans will be really excited for that game. And obviously Man City are the champions, but I don't know. I just have a feeling about that game. So I'm going to say 2-1 to Burnley for the Friday evening game. So moving on to the Saturday games. Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest. I'm going to say 2-0 Arsenal. Arsenal obviously on a high, so I just think they'll have too much Nottingham Forest. So I'm going to say 2-0 Arsenal for that game. Bournemouth West Ham. I'm going to say 1-1 for that game, a draw. I think both of these teams might be down at the bottom half of the table this season. So it'll be interesting to see Bournemouth, by the way, because obviously they changed the manager to the new manager called Andoni Iraola, who's come from Spain, and he's very high thought of. So it'd be interesting to see how Bournemouth kind of fare on Saturday against West Ham. So I'm going to say 1-1 for that game. Everton versus Fulham. I'm actually going to go with Everton. I'm going to say 1-0 Everton for that game. First game of the season at Goodison Park. The fans are going to be well up for it. So I think Everton will just nick that game. So 1-0 Everton. Brighton versus Luton. So obviously it's going to be exciting to see how Luton fare. But Brighton just are in such a good place at the moment in terms of their whole club, really, really good place. I think they'll have too much for Luton. So I'm going to say 3-1 to Brighton on Saturday. So for Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, again, Sheffield United coming back into the Premier League. I'm going to say Crystal Palace will win that game, and I'm saying Crystal Palace will win 2-0. Sheffield United are in quite a difficult place at the moment. They've not signed many players, and they've lost one of their key players from last season, Ndiaye, to Marseille. So I think Sheffield United, not in the greatest place at the moment. So I'm going to say 2-0 Crystal Palace for that game. Newcastle Aston Villa, that's such an exciting game. Both teams have had really good summers. But I'm going to say Newcastle win that game 2-1, just because Newcastle are at home. St James's Park will be rocking for the first game of the season. They're now back in Champions League now, Newcastle. So I just think Newcastle have a bit too much for Aston Villa. So I'm going to say 2-1 to Newcastle. And then moving on to Sunday's games. So kicking off with Brentford Tottenham. as we just touched on, Ange Postecoglou's first game as Tottenham manager. And I'm actually going to agree with you. I'm actually going to say a 2-2 draw. I think that'll be a high scoring game. Both teams really like to attack and try and score goals. We all know Ange Postecoglou loves to do that. So I think that'll be a really entertaining game. And I'm going to say 2-2 for that game. And Chelsea versus Liverpool. Again, we touched on it. A really exciting game, first game of the season. I'm going to go 2-0 Liverpool. I just think Chelsea, although they've had a good pre-season, they did lose Nkunku just there to injury, which is a really big blow for them. And I just think Pochettino needs a bit more power in terms of attacking players. So I just don't think they'll score on Sunday. And Liverpool, they've made a lot of signings and stuff. So I just think Liverpool will have a bit too much on Sunday for Chelsea, and I think that'll finish 2-0 Liverpool. And then finally on Monday, Man United versus the Wolves. I'm going to say 2-0 Man United for that game. Man United have had quite a good summer in terms of signings. I don't think they're finished in the transfer business yet. And Wolves are in a really tough place at the moment. They've not made hardly any sign. I don't think they've spent any money. They've lost Ruben Neves as well, which was their captain. And I think as we're recording this, apparently Lopetegui, the Wolves manager, is in discussions, and it might lead to him leaving the club, which will be, that'd be quite a disaster for them just in the start of the season coming up. So I'm going to see Man United win that game by 2-0. So coming up next, we'll be discussing all the latest transfer news from around the globe. Pearse, is there any transfer news that has interested you this past week?
Yeah, the one that's kind of stood out to me has been the West Ham trying to fill the void of Declan Rice, who's departed to Arsenal. And I think they've been trying to do that with the double swoop of Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay from Manchester United. And I think that McTominay's more of an attacking midfielder, box to box. But he obviously can just put Suchek back in that role, but a bit further back. But I do think I think both players need a rejuvenation of life in their football careers. I don't think the two of them are bad players. I think McTominay, I think, is an exceptional player for Scotland. He's proven that in recent times. I think he gets a fair bit of stick from the Manchester United fans. So does Harry Maguire, because Harry Maguire really puts a foot wrong for England. He was phenomenal at Leicester and at Hull, and I think in a David Moyes system, it's a lot more deeper. You're not having to ask to play that high line, which you get more exposed to with balls in behind. So I do think that I think it was at £60 million rejected for the both of them. I think if you push that to 80, £85 million, I think you get two phenomenal players, and I think you can see the best of them under David Moyes at West Ham.
Yep, I was going to touch on West Ham as well. Obviously Declan Rice leaving, so West Ham got a lot of money for Declan Rice, so they're trying to kind of use that. And obviously the two Man United players, Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay, that's been kind of developing over the last couple of days. Looks like West Ham are really interested in signing both of them. I think it'd be good for McTominay and Maguire. I think they're at a point now where their Man United careers don't look like they're progressing anymore. And I think West Ham would be good clubs for them to go to. Obviously Edson Alvarez as well, who's arriving from Ajax, who's a CDM, so he looks like he could be a potential Declan Rice replacement. Obviously a really good player, had a really good time at Ajax, won trophies. So, that looks like that could be done by this evening or even tomorrow. That could be all completed. So definitely West Ham at the moment look like they're kind of starting to make progress in terms of signing players. So that's kind of West Ham are a club I think people should keep their eyes on. Also as well, Carl Starfelt, the Celtic defender, it looks like he's going to be leaving Celtic, according to Brendan Rodgers. It looks like he's leaving to go to Celta Vigo in La Liga, who are now managed by Rafa Benitez. So I think this week we'll see finally confirmed that Starfelt's left Celtic and joined Celta Vigo. Apparently that is a reason for Starfelt leaving is also partly due to the fact that his girlfriend, Jacinta, who used to play for Celtic Women, she's left um she's left Celtic to go to Sporting Lisbon. So apparently, you know, Starfelt wants to be closer to her, which is obviously understandable. So, yep, Starfelt, I think that's one to keep an eye on this week as well. But apart from that, not much else. Maybe obviously the Mbappe situation still not solved. So that's still to be kind of solved as well. But we're into the last 3 weeks now of the transfer window. So I expect, again, lots of situations to develop and players to move on. And, so it looks like a really interesting next few weeks, the transfer window. So for the final part of the show, Pearse will now give his Asian football roundup.
Yeah, so we're going to kick off with the K League One. Obviously, both leagues started back this weekend, the past weekend. So on Friday, the 4th of August, we had FC Seoul 2, Pohang Steelers 2, which is a top of the table clash. Both sides not gaining or losing anything from that result, apart from obviously losing distance from Ulsan Hyundai. But on Friday, we had a double fixture. So we had Gwangju FC 3, Daejeon Hana Citizen 0, which is another fabulous result for Gwangju. And on Saturday, the 5th of August, we had Suwon Samsung Blue Wings 0, and the Suwon counterparts, Suwon FC 1-2-0. So that was a bottom of the table fixture, and obviously put some distance between them and Samsung Blue Wings. And also Daegu FC 0, Ulsan Hyundai 0. And on Sunday, the 6th of August, with Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors 2, Incheon United 0, Jeju United 1, Gangwon FC 1. So this leaves the table looking like this. So at the top of the table, we have Ulsan Hyundai on 57 points after 25 matches played for all teams. Second position with Pohang Steelers on 45. And then just behind them, with Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors on 40 points. And down at the bottom of the table, it's super tight. We've got Gangwon FC rooted to the foot of the table on 17 points. We're a point above them, Suwon Samsung Blue Wings on 18. And then just above them, we've got Suwon FC, who've put a bit of distance between themselves and the other two on 23 points. Moving on to the J League One action, Saturday the 5th of August, we had two fixtures. Nagoya Grampus 1, Alberts Nagata 0. Shonan Bellmare 1, Sanfrecce Hiroshima 0. And then on Sunday, the 6th of August, all the other matches were played. So Kashima Antlers 3, Hokkaido Consadole Sapporo 0, Yokohama FC 2, Vissel Kobe 0, which is a shock result considering Yokohama have been struggling this season and Vissel Kobe are at the top of the table. And that really benefits Yokohama F Marinos. So that could be a massive result in terms of determining who will win the J League One this season. Cerezo Osaka 0, FC Tokyo 1, Kawasaki Frontale 3, Gambo Osaka 4. Certainly the game of the week, that one. Kyoto Sanga FC 0, Kaohsiung Racer 1, Sagan Tucson 0, Avispa Fukuoka 1, and leaving it off is Urare Diamonds 0, Yokohama F Marinos 0. So the table is super tight at the top and at the bottom of the table. So at the top of the table, after 22 matches played for all sides, we've got Vissel Kobe and Yokohama F Marinos both joined on 44 points. The only difference is Vissel Kobe's got 3 more goal difference, so it's super tight. And in third place, we've got Nagoya Grampus on 42 points. So 3 sides are separated by 2 points. And so it could go either way between now and the end of the season. Down at the bottom of the table, we've got 16th position, we've got Yokohama FC on 18 points. 17th position, we've got Kaohsiung Racer on 17 points. And Shonan Bellmare on 18th on 16 points. So all 3 sides are separated by 2 points. And it could go either way. So all season, all 3 sides have been chopping and changing from where they are, 16th, 17th and 18th. And it could go all the way to the very end of the season. So in terms of Asian football news, so we've got former Barcelona icon and Vasil Kobe star Andres Iniesta has signed for Ras Al-Khaimah in the UAE, so United Arab Emirates. Iniesta's put pen to paper on a 1-year deal with the option to extend for a further year. So that could run until June 2025. So we've got Ronaldinho, Materazzi, and Fabio Cannavaro will arrive in South Korea tomorrow to promote the Legends match that will be held in South Korea on the 21st of October. So that'll be one to keep an eye on as well, to see all the world stars come to South Korea. And Daiji Kamada has joined Italian side Lazio on a 2-year deal with the option to extend for a 3rd year. Kamada, 27, won Europa League with Eintracht Frankfurt in 2022, will add attacking talent to Maurizio Sarri's side following the departure of Sergei Milinkovic-Savic to Al-Hilal. Suwon FC are expected to terminate the contract with their striker Lars Veldewijk. The South African striker was caught drunk driving, and it's not the first time this season that a foreign striker in South Korea has been caught drunk driving. Just have to go back a few months to Sandro Lima doing it for Guangzhou FC, and he's now back in Brazil, so the repercussions are pretty serious over here. So drunk driving for some of the strikers, and that could be infinito in the K-League. So lastly, we've got massive news in terms of the Korean League. Panini Stickers has signed a partnership with the K-League 1. K-League is the first Asian pro sports organisation to launch Panini Sports Card Collection. As well as K-League main players, autograph auto cards of legendary players from K-League will also be included. And that's all your latest Asian football news.
Thank you, Pearse. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Football Chuggu Podcast. This podcast will be available to listen to on the Football Chuggu YouTube channel and also the Football Chuggu website. Thanks for listening and see you soon.
Bye-bye.